At 16, I began working at Joe's Diner, where the constant smell of grease and burnt coffee stuck to me like a second skin. Life back then felt like walking a tightrope, every day teetering on the edge. Mom had just been diagnosed with MS, slowly losing control of her body. Dad had already checked out long before that, sinking into a whiskey bottle and leaving me to shoulder the weight of everything. It was just me and my little brother, Tommy, who was only 10 and too young to understand why everything felt so cold and empty. "Ammy, sweet fart," Mom would say from her wheelchair, her voice quivering like her hands. "You don't have to work. You should be focusing on your studies." But I would smile, kiss her forehead, and grab my apron. My textbooks would sit untouched in my backpack until I had a spare moment between shifts to catch my breath. Poverty isn't just empty stomachs or chilly rooms, it's the constant pressure that builds with every bill you can't pay, every school fee that goes unpaid. I lived in dread of the phone ringing, bracing myself for another debt collector, and when Tommy needed new shoes, I'd figure out a way to stretch what little I had, even if it meant going without. Dad would stumble home late, his breath reeking of cheap alcohol. He'd leer at me from the kitchen doorway as I counted out bills, each one more crucial than the last. "You're just like your mother," he'd slur, his words barely intelligible, "always worrying about money. Life's too short, kid." Then, like clockwork, he'd collapse on the couch, leaving me to clean up whatever mess he'd made this time. By the time I turned 18, my life was a blur of exhaustion, mornings at the diner, evenings at the grocery store, weekends scrubbing floors. My grades barely scraped by, but we kept going. Tommy grew up, Mom's med stayed filled, and somehow, we survived. But then, everything fell apart. I was restocking shelves one afternoon when I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. Laughter. Not the tired, strained laughter of my mother, but a full, carefree laugh I didn't recognize. I turned the corner, my curiosity pulling me in, and froze. There she was, standing. Yes, standing, next to a car piled with organic groceries, fancy cheeses, and wine bottles that cost more than I made in a month. Her hair was done up, her clothes were designer, and there wasn't a tremor in sight. And beside her, Dad, sober, well-groomed, in a suit I didn't even know he owned. "Don't forget, we need more for the beach house this weekend," she said, tossing an expensive bottle of Merlot into the cart. "The Hendersons are coming." The beach house, the Hendersons. I couldn't believe my eyes. Just that morning, Mom had been in her wheelchair, apologizing for being a burden. Now, she was gliding through the store like she owned the place. They paid with a gold credit card and packed everything into a shiny black BMW I'd never seen before. I stood there in my worn-out sneakers and dirty uniform, watching them drive off, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I couldn't bring myself to go home that night. Instead, I ended up at the park where I used to take Tommy when life felt lighter. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom. "Where are you? Tommy's worried. Please come home." I didn't reply. Instead, I checked my bank account. The balance made my stomach drop. Every cent I'd earned, every hour I'd worked, every sacrifice I'd made, it had all gone to them. 3 jobs, no sleep, no future, all to maintain their illusion. Another message popped up. "We need money for Tommy's school supplies. Can you pick up an extra shift?" That was the breaking point. All the love, guilt, and loyalty I'd felt for them snapped, turning into something sharp and unforgiving. That's when I started digging. It didn't take long to uncover the truth. The beach house wasn't rented, they owned it outright. Dad's drunken act was just a cover for his real job as a consultant. And Mom's MS? A performance so convincing it could have been on stage. They'd built an elaborate lie to keep me in the dark while they lived a life of luxury. I sat in that park, watching the sunrise, as everything I'd believed crumbled. Every sacrifice, every dream I'd put on hold for them, was all for their greed. But I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. If they'd lied to me, they'd lied to others. I was going to expose everything. I started documenting it all, every lie, every hidden account, every fake doctor's appointment. My phone became a vault of evidence. Videos of Mom walking without issue when she thought no one was looking. Photos of Dad dining in fancy restaurants while claiming he was working. But it was Tommy who uncovered the final piece. One night, as I tucked him in, he pulled on my sleeve. "Amy," he whispered, his voice shaky, "I need to tell you something." "What is it, buddy?" I asked, kneeling beside him. His eyes were full of tears. "Mom and Dad, they make me lie to you." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" He cried as he told me everything, how they'd coached him since he was little to pretend we were poor whenever I was around, how they'd bought him 2 sets of everything, old clothes for our house, designer outfits for when they took him out, how they'd promised him a car if he kept their secret. They said it was a game, he sobbed, but it's not fun anymore. I hate it, Amy, I hate watching them hurt you. I held him close, fighting back my own tears. His confession shattered the last remnants of the illusion I'd clung to. This wasn't just about money, it was a cruel, calculated manipulation they'd been pulling on both of us. The next morning, for the first time in years, I called in sick to all 3 of my jobs. Instead of working, I went to the library, determined to find out everything. What I uncovered left me in shock. Dad's consulting business wasn't just profitable, it was worth millions. They owned properties across multiple states, beach houses and condos I didn't know existed. Mom's medical records were flawless, no trace of MS, no sign of any illness. The struggles I'd endured had all been a well-crafted lie. But the biggest betrayal came when I found old bank records. Large monthly deposits were made from my grandmother's estate, my dad's mother, who'd passed away when I was a child. She had left her entire fortune to me and Tommy, meant for us when we turned 18. I was 20, and for 2 years, my father had secretly kept my inheritance, funneling it into his personal accounts while I worked myself into exhaustion. Then one evening, my mom called a family meeting. She sat in her wheelchair, pretending to be concerned and fragile. Amy, darling, she started, her voice oozing with false sweetness, we're really worried about you. All this work, it's too much. How about we move back home? Let us take care of you. I looked at her, then at Dad, who was slouched in his chair, acting defeated. Tommy was silent, his gaze focused on the floor. That's rich, I said, pulling out my phone. I've got concerns too. I tapped on the screen, playing a video of Mom laughing in a grocery store, loading expensive items into their cart. Their faces went pale. How dare you spy on us? Mom snapped, her fake warmth gone. After everything we've done for you. I let out a bitter laugh. Everything you've done for me? You mean stealing my inheritance, making Tommy lie, and forcing me to work 3 jobs while you lived it up in luxury? Dad sat up straight, dropping the act. Listen here. No, I cut him off. You listen. I've hired a lawyer. I have proof of the fraud, the hidden accounts, and the fake medical claims. Tomorrow, I'm going to the police. Then, something shocking happened. Mom, despite being in a wheelchair, stood up and slapped me across the face. The room fell silent. Tommy gasped, and Dad's expression became cold and calculating. You ungrateful little, Mom started, but I interrupted her. I've already sent everything to my lawyer, I said, my cheek stinging. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. Dad narrowed his eyes. How much? How much to make it go away? His voice was even, but there was a hint of menace. Name your price. I stared at him, feeling a mix of disbelief and disgust. It's not about money anymore, it's about justice. Mom laughed bitterly. Justice? Go ahead, tell everyone. Who will believe you? We're respected in this town. You're just a waitress who couldn't even finish college. Her words stung, but I stood firm. Maybe so, but I've got proof, and by tomorrow, everyone will know who you really are. I turned to leave, but Tommy's voice stopped me. I'm going with you. Mom's face twisted in rage. You're not going anywhere. Sit down. But Tommy stood up, grabbing a backpack he'd packed secretly. He walked over to me, determination in his eyes. I'm done lying. As we walked out, Dad's voice called after us. You'll regret this. We didn't turn back, but his words weren't just a threat. What came next would test us, pushing us to the edge, and proving our will to survive. My lawyer didn't waste any time. By morning, legal actions had begun. Dad responded swiftly. He froze all accounts, including the ones that held my hard-earned money. Then came the smear campaign. Local father, heartbroken daughter fabricates lies about disabled mother. The headline screamed from the front page. Dad's powerful friends made sure I was painted as the ungrateful daughter who betrayed her family. The fallout was immediate. The diner fired me due to bad publicity. The grocery store cited company policy to let me go. Even my house cleaning clients stopped answering my calls. Tommy and I had to move into a cheap motel, surviving on the emergency savings I had worked so hard to save. But Dad made one huge mistake. People talk. Servers, housekeepers, grocery store workers, they see everything. Sarah, a server at the country club, was the first to step forward, with video of Mom playing tennis. Then came a lawyer who recalled Dad's visits to a beach house. Soon, a flood of evidence came through, from people tired of watching the rich abuse their power. The final blow came from an unexpected source, Dad's longtime secretary, Linda. I've kept quiet for 20 years, she told me, handing me a thick folder, but watching them destroy you, I can't stay silent anymore. Inside were documents proving not only the fraud against me, but also years of financial crimes. Dad had been embezzling from clients and using my grandmother's inheritance to cover it up. The court case dragged on for months. Every day, Mom and Dad showed up, playing the role of victims, polished and composed. I wore the same borrowed suit day after day because it was all I had. Tommy testified bravely, his voice trembling but his words sharp. He spoke about the years of forced deception, how Mom had coached him to lie and rewarded his compliance. Experts, investigators, and a long list of witnesses followed. One by one, the lies Mom and Dad had built up crumbled. The judge's verdict came swiftly. I was granted my rightful inheritance, and Dad was convicted of fraud and embezzlement. He was escorted out in handcuffs. Mom remained in charge, but her reputation was permanently tarnished. As Dad was taken away, Mom grabbed my arm, her face twisted with rage and desperation. "We did it for you," she hissed. "Everything we did was for you. We wanted you to learn the value of hard work." I looked at her designer dress, her perfect manicure, and the fury in her eyes. "No," I said, "you did it because you could. You thought you'd never get caught. But you taught me something, the value of truth." That was 3 years ago. Today, Tommy is in college, studying law. He wants to help other victims of financial abuse. I used part of my inheritance to start my own business, one that gives people second chances, just like I got. Mom moved away after the divorce and started over in another state. She sends cards occasionally, filled with excuses and apologies. I don't care to read them anymore. Dad writes too, his letters full of anger, blame, and barely veiled threats. Each one reminds me that I made the right choice. Sometimes, I visit the diner where I used to work. I sit at the counter, sip my coffee, and watch the new waitress hustle between tables. She doesn't know my story, doesn't recognize me from the newspapers. To her, I'm just another customer, someone who tips well and treats her kindly. Last week, I found my old diner uniform while cleaning. Seeing it brought back the exhaustion, the fear, and the betrayal, but it also reminded me of my strength. I donated it to a women's shelter, along with a generous check to help others escape their own traps. Because here's the thing about lies, they only thrive in darkness. Once exposed to the light, they die. Tommy and I have a new tradition now. Every Sunday, we volunteer at a financial literacy program, helping people recognize manipulation, understand their rights, and find their voice. "You're my hero," Tommy told me recently, not just for fighting back, but for helping others fight too. But I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who learned the hard way that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about truth, respect, and breaking the cycle of abuse. People often ask if I regret exposing my parents, if the cost was too high. I think about the girl I was, working 3 jobs, sacrificing everything for a lie. Then I think of the life I've built, honest, purposeful, and free. No, I don't regret it. Some prices are worth paying. And the truth? The truth is priceless. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay stunned.